All right, boys being boys, what happens when you photograph a bunch of guys when they're all getting together? Groomsmen, what do you do? Well, that's just it. When you think about girls just want to have fun and boys being boys, there's a certain sensibility that just you feel. And again, I'm not saying that there is such a cliche that we have to photograph men in a manly kind of a way. It depends on who you're photographing. But yes, ultimately cliches are cliches because they're mostly true. So when you're talking about guys getting together, they're often going to stir each other. They're going to have a bit of fun. They're going to have a certain camaraderie. There is going to be a certain kind of masculine sensibility that goes with that. So I like photographing these kinds of shots that basically when the boys are getting ready. So traditionally, I like the groom, if I'm going to photograph a wedding, for example, I like the groom to be ready in his shoes, pants and shirt only. And then we can do things like the tie, the vest, cravat, jacket, cufflinks, watch, all on camera. If I'm running out of time or there's a big bridal party or I have less time than I'm normally allotted to, I will usually ask the guys to get completely ready. Now, yes, I'm going to be showing you mostly groomsmen photographs, as in a bunch of guys in a bridal party of guys specifically, but this could be likened to a family portrait with a father and sons. It could be with three brothers. It could be cousins, doesn't really matter. Remember, just because I'm showing you many photographs that happen to be at a wedding, it does not eliminate the fact that this might be relevant to you in your genre of photography that may not specifically be weddings. So this, for example, we've got some lights that are existing in the environment, and I just had turns of having people get ready and the groom sort of being illuminated with these beautiful little strip lights that are on the walls, and then I'm very specifically photographing for the album here as well. As I keep on going, you know, I've got the groom here in the foreground with the guys in the background. I've got the biggest guy last because I want to get the proportions right a little bit more. And then in this particular case, I've got a very tight crop on the boys. I wouldn't normally crop right at feet there, but just by the pure nature, I did get wider ones as they were walking closer. My favorite one with their expression was where their feet were cropped off. I'm like, you know what, no big deal. And that's it. Sometimes you'll get guys that, especially at a wedding, that might be themed, which is really, really cool. This was a vintage theme, as you can see. And you can see how I've given each of the guys something a little bit different to do. You know, he's crossing his arms, gives us a different sensibility. You know, he's got his hands sort of down. This guy's trying to be a tough guy. He's adjusting the hat. He's adjusting the braces there. So you see how I'm bringing out personalities just by a simple different gesture. And that is a really easy way of creating a bit of personality in your photographs, rather than just say, all right, guys, hands in the pockets, come close together, look in the camera, smile. Yes, I do that shot. But with this, what they're wearing is screaming to me, Jerry, do something a little bit different. You know, this was inspired by that very famous movie poster of The Untouchables. And you may picture the guys on the street, you know, Sean Connery and all those guys there. And what's the other guy's name there? Kevin Costner and so on, Andy Garcia, whatever. But you think of all those guys, you think of a sensibility. So when I look at the guys wearing something, it gives me like a movie montage of almost just everything that it reminds me of, and then it gives me an idea, and then I commit to that idea and I execute. This next shot, and as I told you before, I often get guys to basically get dressed up to a point where they're shoes, pants and shirt on, and then we do everything else on camera. In this case, I got the guys to just put their ties very loosely around their collars. And then I saw this really interesting little alcove in the bedroom. I thought, wouldn't it be cool to illuminate the groom on the reflection of the best man's shirt? So have a look at this. So what I love about this is you've got the two guys, I'm not going to say they're irrelevant, because we did get a shot looking in the camera smiling of all of them cleanly. But in this case, I love the fact that we've got the best man that's got the second best light. And then, of course, you've got the groom with the best light, and then the guys on either side that are framing them as well, which I thought was really cool. And then sometimes you'll get an environmental portrait that will look really cool too. So don't forget that based upon the nature of where you are, where the house is, are you photographing from a hotel room? Is there a balcony? Would you photograph in a hotel room and then maybe ask the guys to go down, walk along the beach and then photograph down? Like, the environment will often tell you what to do, but guys being guys, when I just mentioned the word guys being guys, you may have probably thought of just guys having a smoke or a cigar. That's what guys do, you know? And there, of course, as you probably have seen, or if you've done it before, backlighting smoke is going to be a really good way of illuminating smoke because you can see it. It's contrasting against the background. And then we've got a nice little triangular composition, and we're not trying to make this look too perfect. We're making it look a little bit raw, a little bit dirtier, to sort of match that masculine sensibility. And I've shown you many foreground, background kind of shots, but this is a different one that I've shown you. He's way in the foreground, and then we've got that nice little triangular composition, and it just looks good. I would suggest that it's all about perspective. Don't forget that when you're photographing anyone, that a pose can look different based upon the height in which you're photographing it, the angle in which you're photographing it, the lens choice, the compression, but no different in terms of staggering your subject matter sort of over a certain kind of a shot, and also using a shallow depth of field to do all that as well. This one here, you may remember the comparative shot of the girls in this particular environment. So you've got your traditional shot, and then of course you've got this one. Now, the lighting isn't perfect on them, but it's more masculine, so it actually is suitable. But then I got the guys in a bit of a hallway, and you can sort of see how this is almost like a movie poster or an album cover. So it's a little bit different. And then we go down, and there's a billiard table in the house. So I'm like, well, yeah, let's get the guys playing pool because that's what you do. But guys like to stir each other. And I know most cultures are like that, but guys especially, it's always like who's trying to outwit the other and who cracks the joke, who's going to laugh louder and all that kind of thing. But, and that's very much part of the Australian and the Greek culture as well. So for me, being Greek and Australian and American, it's just, who can outwit the other and who can do that? And it's just part of what we do. And it crosses boundaries and borders and things like that. That's just human nature. We just love to have fun. But celebrate those relationships. This half posed itself, and then all I did was tweak it a little bit by getting the parents together with the son, getting the boys together there as well, and then being able to just have some fun with all of them. And then I thought, let me just bring the groom in the foreground, and then we've got split lighting with a bit of a kicker, and then all the family in the background. But it doesn't matter who you're photographing, that when you're actually photographing multiple people, there is a certain hierarchy to it. It could be that you want the groom in the middle because he's the prominent one. He's the king, so therefore he should be elevated. There'll be times where you just get them walking. This kind of a shot I affectionately call the Reservoir Dogs shot. You've seen the movie by Quentin Tarantino, Reservoir Dogs. You've got that classic sort of shot in that poster where the boys are walking with their ties. And often people will refer to this as something that they wish to have on their wedding day. And that certainly is a homage to that. And it's certainly been, I guess, emulated throughout many movies, way before even Tarantino did it, but he certainly popularised it. Why can't we do the same thing with what we do? This one was done foreground, background again, but we're staggering them out. And this was shot with a reflector. And I think at 2.8, but then they just stagger out like that. But you can use the environment. Like I've said many times, that the environment and the lighting will always tell you what to do. Obviously, there's a bridge. They can lean on it certain ways. He can lean on one side, he's on the other. The groom's a bit more stronger, so we basically want him with both hands and so on. So remember too, it's funny, I remember I was in Italy. This is probably the biggest wedding I've ever photographed. It was a 5-day wedding in Rome. And so many friends and guests and family flew to Rome for this wedding. And it was over 5 days because every event, lunch and dinner, just was more elaborate than the next. It was quite amazing, an amazing spectacle. And we got to know the family really well. And all of a sudden the bride says, hey, the groom wants a shot with all his friends. I walk in the room, there's red walls, there's this big couch, a sofa that only fits only a handful of people. What do I do? So I posed them all in and around the sofa. And by the way, I had one on-camera flash and I've got nothing else to use here. What do I do? Well, all the walls being red, I think from memory, Melissa had a reflector and she put it behind me. And I pointed my on-camera flash up like this and off back like this. And Melissa was holding the reflector like a halo right behind me. And this flash now is no longer my light source. The reflector behind me is the light source. Bang, now the light source is big and soft and clean and it illuminates everybody. Now, this was back in the days when you would hear that flash sound, like you would bomb the flash and it would go, Like it would, and it almost, you had smoke coming out of the speed light because so much power was being drawn, because I had to shoot this at, say, f/16 or something like that. And I think I literally took a handful of shots and the batteries were dead. This was the shot that we took. Now, there was a shot looking in the camera smiling, but I wanted guys to just have fun and just talk crap and just be boys. So I gave them very quick, loose direction. And I sort of said, look, please don't look at the camera. I know that one guy did on the top left, but I don't mind that because it's sort of, and this guy as well. But everyone interacting, there's like a whole bunch of stories in here. So I forget the exact direction that I gave, but I remember basically giving the direction, say, hey, if you're closer to some people than others, then get in your little group within this big group. If you've got a brother or whatever, a cousin, be next to them. And then I put the main players like the groom, the best man, the brother, all in and around the groom. And then I said, who's got good knees? And straight away, you're going to get some tough guys saying, yeah, I've got good knees. In other words, I'm happy to sit down. And then all of a sudden, this whole dynamic is created rather than just looking in the camera smiling. Please just get beyond that shot looking in the camera smiling. Do it, 100%. Knock it over. If these shots don't work, you've got it in the can, but then now you can play. In as much as we've shown you so many photographs of guys, we haven't shown you one like this yet. It's simply just a long, little railing of a concrete sort of railing as a foreground. And now this time we get the guys in the foreground and the groom in the background. What about the patriarch? You've got the grandfather there, and then you've got the groom and the father. So the groom and the groom's father have got the hands on either side of the grandfather, and then you've got the groomsmen on either side. So if you look at the hand gestures, I love this portrait because, number one, it's such a legacy for this family. The grandfather has since passed away since this was photographed, so how important is his photograph? But I love the fact that everything was revolving around this very handsome man, as you can see, great character face, but he's a patriarch and he's still alive and had such a blessing to be actually at his grandson's wedding. So I took the portrait of them all looking in the camera smiling, but then I went in, cropped in closer, and I love the fact that we get this repetition of hands that forms this beautiful arc, again, framing the patriarch of this family, and I think is just absolutely beautiful. Then at one point in this wedding, the grandfather was just sitting quite comfortably and conservatively, I didn't pose him whatsoever. And then the actual father was adjusting the tie of the groom. I'm like, here's an incredible portrait that just is waiting to happen. So there we have the grandfather here, then we have the father, and then fixing up the son's tie. And it's a true legacy portrait. I even love the fact that we've got some old Westwood or Wedgwood, I forget what they call it, but the ceramics and the china in there, which gives it that little hint of tradition. And then of course you've got that shot can work on its own, and then you can actually see it together as a complete picture. So family portraits, again, it doesn't have to be predictable. It could be something that in the environment that is screaming out, photograph me, like photograph these generations. And then sometimes it could just be that you just want to look freaking cool. I took this shot vertically and symmetrically and all that kind of stuff, but something didn't work. It looked a bit too perfect. So I just angled it a little bit, added to the energy. I had breathing space between the groom's arms and his legs slightly and overlapping, and then breathing space. And now all of a sudden we get a dynamic portrait of the groom and the groomsmen. But look at how many photographs we've shared of groups and guys and girls. And it seems to be never ending. The ideas are never ending. It's exactly like a phone number, as we discussed. You change one thing, one digit, change one more digit, and all of a sudden you've got millions of combinations. So don't get stuck dialing the same phone number. Just try something different. And if it works, there's another feather in your cap, and life is good. Also, don't forget, whether you're photographing guys or girls or a family, that you should be photographing everyone individually. If I have time, especially at a wedding, what I'll try to do is I'll photograph the groomsmen individually, if I have time. This is one of those sort of occasions where I'm like, all right, if I do everything and I've got lots of variety and I feel like I've got some time, I need some more stuff to do. Or let's say, for example, the groom goes to the bathroom. Let's say one of the groomsmen's running late. I can fill in my time by adding more value and a bit more bit more finesse and variety by photographing them individually. This just happens to be from a wedding album where I featured a different generation. So this is basically the groom's father's groomsmen juxtaposed with the, the groomsmen of the present day. But I love creating little different hierarchies like this. You've got the groom with two brothers, but that's just a classic timeless piece and a timeless portrait of these boys together, which I think is really important. So don't forget, there's going to be times where it's appropriate to smile. There's going to be times where people are just crying. There's going to be times where people just want to look cool. There's times where there's a certain dynamic and you just know that these guys will really appreciate just a really cool classic portrait. But a simple change of shoulder position and a bit of negative space all of a sudden changes the whole dynamic of the photograph. Again, I told you that the light and the location will often tell you what to do. In this case, well, the sun's coming in this direction. I want this lighting falling on their faces and giving us this beautiful loop lighting slash short lighting slash Rembrandt lighting. Call it what you will. It's dramatic lighting that actually works well for a guy. And we point them all towards the sun. How did they all look towards the sun and not squint? Well, of course they did squint. I said to them, I want you to look in that direction. And they did, and they were doing this. And I said, close your eyes. Okay, I want you to look where you're looking on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, click. And then they can squint all they want. But I've got the shot that I want. All I need is a fraction of a second. Now, I've told you many times, don't waste this. If I bring the groom in the foreground, all of a sudden I get another shot to my arsenal very, very quickly. Then I get him to turn around and stir the boys. And again, I've got a different shot here. I love this guy. He looks like a bit of a porn star there, so it's all fun. And just guys walking, creating long shadows and a bit of flair adds a point of difference. Why not lie on the ground, get 2 guys in the foreground squatting down and then shooting upwards, letting boys be boys? Again, shooting people individually. I love these shots on the left-hand side because what I deliberately did was I had them almost in a circle or interacting. And all I did was photograph beyond 2 shoulders, like maybe framing the person that I'm focusing on. So you can see very clearly that every single groomsman, I gave them each a chance to shine, and I used each other to basically frame them. And then you've got the groom in the foreground there as well. And then sometimes you're just going to get guys, at a very casual environment. And again, this shot on the left-hand side could be a bunch of boys at a beach, for example. It doesn't have to be a wedding. Certainly they were doing a beach wedding, so that's how they were dressed like that and everything like that. But very quickly, you can just change your angle and perspective and you get a shot like this where that was pretty much the shot from the beginning. Just change your position, change your angle, bang, you got a different shot. Here's a different version of it. This was actually photographed at 1.4. So can you imagine, how do you get interactive shots of guys laughing and carrying on and get the groom in focus at 1.4? Well, that was part of the charm of it. I actually said to the groom, I go, whatever you do, just you can't move. Guys, do everything you can to make the groom laugh and crack up and break his composure. And that was it. So the groom knew that I said, if you just move slightly, you're going to be out of focus. So he's like clamped in that shot. The guys are stirring him, and that was part of the charm of the shot. They made him laugh. I got the shot, and again, this is basically boys being boys. Remember that vintage wedding that I showed you? I love this context. Now, they looked like, in the old days where you'd say, put up your dukes and go for a fight. Well, I told them that, and they started playing around. Then that middle left shot, you see how the guy's got a fist pulled up to his face and he's holding the braces there. I said, you guys look like the Three Stooges. You know how the Stooges would like hold a suspender and punch the other, keep the fist there, they would spring back and then bang into the face again. So they started playing around, and this one here, I just got the groom to flick the cards into the camera and so on. So what I'm getting at, guys, is that our notion of what is cool and handsome for a guy and what is pretty and beautiful for a girl really, I think, has been popularized by movies that we've watched, music videos that we've seen, billboards. And I'm not saying that we're totally dictated by commercialism, and I'd like to think that we're not, but we sort of are. Because what we do is so every image that you've seen on TV, movies, a billboard, a bus with a photograph on it, even just everyday life, it's popularized by things that we see in the world around us. So we have a notion of what is handsome, what is beautiful, what is pretty, what is cool, whatever it may be. and we start to sort of get a sense of what people want, but we can't help but be influenced by what's around us. Trends are trends, and there are trends that will come and go, and there are trends that will just stay forever. For example, will the tie ever be replaced with anything else? Well, there's a bow tie, there's a normal sort of single tie. Will we ever see anything else that is going to replace those in the history of the future of mankind? No. Like, there's nothing that's going to say, well, from now on, when you go to work, you can wear this. It's one of those things that have just been popularized. It's in our common, almost what we call visual vernacular. We just accept it. And so what I'm getting at is these sensibilities, although I'm talking about masculine and feminine, yes, those rules can be broken. You are going to get a masculine sensibility for a female and vice versa. You just have to photograph people who they are, what they look like, what the feeling that you want to represent to those people. So remember that. And as well too, I want you to remember too that even if you're of a mature age, in this case a mature age groom, does not mean you don't want to look mature age. What I'm getting at is, I don't know about you, but as a guy, I just want to look cool. I want to look handsome. I'm unashamedly, I just want to look cool and handsome. Do I always look like it? Probably not, but I can try. In this case, he actually looks like Robert De Niro a little bit, but I just had the guys sort of standing there close together and getting them to interact. It only took me a handful of shots to get these shots. But there is a sensibility of when guys get together, you know, we just love to have fun and stir a little bit, and it's usually not as deep and meaningful. It's sometimes we're just playing around and horsing around and all that kind of stuff. You know, it could just be playing with the tie and stirring each other. So remember that you're photographing a bunch of guys together, whether it's groomsmen, a bunch of brothers, whether it's a dad, a son, a grandson, there is a certain sensibility, and it doesn't mean we have to stick to it. So embrace what we love about that kind of sensibility, and certainly use inspiration of what's around us, but more importantly, use the personalities of the individuals, use the dynamics between the relationships, and these kind of shots and the ideas that will come into your head will reveal themselves. All you have to do is massage them, technically, let's say, but more important than that is understand those so we can get the best out of who we're photographing. Hope you enjoyed that. Next up, we're going to take a deeper look at how to photograph families in a lot more detail. Can't wait to share with you.